Well, hey there guys, this is Corinna from mydigitalfarmer.com and from sharedlegacyfarms.com. Hope you guys are doing great. We are just a few days away from Christmas and the end of the year, and so I have been busy putting together my promotional calendar for 2019. And so today I wanted to walk you through my 6 steps for how I went about putting that promotional calendar together. Now, if you're like many farmers I know, and if you're like I was several years ago, my idea of a promotional calendar back then was something I threw together 2 weeks before I really needed to. And I would go through the summer kind of just pointing and shooting at things as they came up because life was nuts. And as I've gotten a little more sophisticated and I've built my marketing machine, I've discovered that it really helps to go into the new year with somewhat of a rough plan. And that's what I want to walk you through today. These 6 steps do not take a ton of time, and I recommend that if you're just beginning, you go very simple. So let me just walk you through how I do it, and I want you to take these suggestions to heart and maybe take some of them and put them into your process. So let's get started. The very first step that I do is actually really easy. It requires printing out all the documents that you're going to need to do the job. So first of all, I print out my month at a glance calendar, January through December. I like them to be full sheets like this. And yes, I do it on paper. And eventually this gets transferred to a Google Doc when I'm done. But print out 12 different pages, January through December. Then I get a big stack of little Post-it notes like this. I like the little ones because I like to stick them all over my calendar, as you'll see in a moment. I grab my paper, my pencil, and then I also have this little guy, which I'm going to let you guys download at sharedlegacyfarms.com/promo plan. This is my promotion planner grid, and it's 2 pages. It basically lays out the different phases that I am focusing on of the customer journey, and then there's columns and rows that go across the top for the different months of the year. So you can grab this if you want at sharedlegacyfarms.com/promo plan. Really, really good tool. All right, so that's kind of step 1, getting all those documents ready. And then I create kind of a sacred space in my kitchen. I don't let anyone bother me for at least 3 hours, and I give myself full attention to this process. I turn off my phones and I really give my best energy to this for a full half day. All right, so step 1, get all your documents ready. Step 2 is to make a list of all of the different items that you want or that you need to promote. So this is where you have to do a little bit of brainstorming if you've never done this before, or you've never really thought through a promotional plan before. And I also feel like the training that I've done on building a value ladder is really helpful here. If you haven't watched that training, I'll put the link in the comments below so you can watch it later. But that training really helps you identify what are the different products in my product suite? What are the big flagships that I even sell? What are the different areas and brackets of my business that I'm trying to promote? And identifying what those key products are. So I don't mean, I sell cilantro and I sell parsley and I sell peppers and eggplant. I'm talking about big categories like I sell at the farmer's market, or I have an online store, or I have a fruit share, or I have a meat share. Like, what are those different buckets that bring your income in? So in my case, this is going to show up backwards, but I just kind of jotted these things down. These are the key drivers of, for our promotional plan at least, the key drivers of our income. So we have our CSA, we have a fruit share, we have a sampler share, which is sort of like a way to get people to try it out for 4 weeks. Once we sell out, that's what we offer people to kind of get into our pipeline. I have the Online Academy, which is an online membership for anybody who wants to have access to all my ebooks and my video tutorials for how to get better at eating the CSA way. There's the training for being successful as a CSA customer. That's all in there. So that's something I'm going to sell too. Farmers market store bulk orders is one of our big buckets. We make a lot of money in that area. We've discovered our canners, our freezers. And we have our farm dinners that we do a few of those, and that can be a little bit of an income driver. So those are kind of my primary buckets that I chose for my business, and I just wrote them out. So step 2 is identifying what those are in your value ladder and putting that on the table so that you have that in front of you. Those are the items that I'm going to have to make sure get promoted as I begin to fill out this grid, as I begin to think through how do I warm someone up to want to even buy those things, okay? So that's step 2. Your buckets are going to be different than mine, but it's a critical process that you have that right in front of you so that you know these are the things that I need to sell. I also recommend, if you can, to go back and look at your data, if you keep data and records from the year before, and see how many people purchased these items in the past to kind of help you see a ballpark of what you can expect next year, and then try to maybe sell a little bit more if you can. So, we actually have set a goal that we want to try to sell 50 memberships in our online academy, 35 CSA samplers, 100 fruit shares, etc. So kind of try to come up with that dollar figure or that number so that you have a goal to shoot for. Don't just be like, oh, I want to promote this in general. But if you have a number that you're going for, that's going to really drive you to, I think, promote better and come up with a plan so that you know when you've hit the target and you can celebrate your success. Okay, step 3, here we go, is to plot out the dates of those key products on your calendar. So when do they start? When are they at first available? All right. So in my case, my CSA begins usually the middle of June. And so I went to June in my calendar. I found that week and I wrote into the little block, CSA week 1 begins. Okay. When is the first time that I'm going to start going to the farmer's market in this season? I write that in there. When do I want to have my farm dinners? I write those in there. This is important because when you're planning, obviously, you need to reverse engineer your promotional plan so that those promotional pieces and that warming up of the funnel starts several months out in some cases so that someone is ready to actually purchase when that product is finally available. All right, so make sure you plot those out onto your calendar. So this could be things like, when does your CSA start if you have multiple seasons? Like, when are those start dates and end dates? When is the farmer's market start date for you for the various markets? Or when does that season begin? Do you have any special events that need to go in there that are kind of sacred? And I would also pay attention to, like, what I've learned the hard way, important dates for your community. So like Super Bowl Sunday, for instance, or are there festivals that happen in your town, in your area locally that are kind of sacred spaces? So if I try to have an event or promote something on that weekend, that could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. So, we have like a Jeep festival in downtown Toledo, which is huge and so many people go. And so that could be a good thing for the farmer's market, I suppose, if people decide they want to come to the farmer's market while they're at the Jeep Fest. Or we could just be like, you know what, we're probably not going to do so well on that day because everyone's going to be at Jeep Fest and the traffic is horrible and nobody wants to come to the market. So just kind of knowing what those dates are and making sure you plot those in there so you don't plan promotional periods around some of those dates that are sacred to your community, okay? All right, we're already on step 4. Here we go. This is the big one. This is where you actually create the promotion strategies for what I call every temperature in your funnel, okay? So that's where you're gonna pull out this little guy, all right? And you're gonna pull out your Post-it notes and your pencil. And this is where you start to get creative. Now, I want you to watch, if you haven't already, there's a video tutorial that's all about the customer value journey. I consider it to be one of the foundational pieces of content that I've taught on. And it really walks you through the different stages of a customer as they first enter your awareness, your level of awareness, as they move through your funnel. So when people first hear about you, at first they don't even know who you are, right? Like, they don't even know that you exist. And then they'll move into kind of like this, oh, I've become aware of your brand. I know that you're out there. Maybe I walked by your farmer's market booth, or I saw a video you put on Facebook, or somebody mentioned you to me. Like, now you're in my general area of awareness. But those people are typically not ready to buy a high ticket item like a CSA, for example. or any kind of membership, even maybe a bulk order, they're just not ready to buy yet. They need to get to know you a little better. And so there is a process that customers walk through in every industry, not just in farming, as they move through a brand. And knowing what those steps are is really, really important, because each one of those people in that process, they have different needs. They need to be spoken to differently. They need to be taken care of differently. And that's where this grid comes in handy. Because when I put my promotional calendar together now, I don't just make one blanket video and throw it on Facebook and hope that it's going to hit everyone. I'm really targeting a very specific person in my funnel who is going to respond to that. Okay, so the different sections of the promotion planner, if you download this at sharedlegacyfarms.com/promo plan, you'll be able to see them. The categories are aware, then engage. They begin to engage with your brand. Then comes the subscribe portion of the journey, where they're starting to give their contact information. They give you their email address or their phone number, maybe at the farmer's market, maybe through digitally if they go to your website. Then comes convert, where they're actually ready to purchase something from you for the first time, whether it's a low dollar thing or a high dollar thing. Then comes the excite phase, which is a really, really important part of the process. And I have a feeling this is one of the reasons why some CSAs struggle with retention, because they're not doing a good job of exciting them after they begin to use the product, and they're not teaching them how to use it. Ascend is the next category, which is where you really make your money. That's where you're moving people up through the ladder. You're continuing to put products and offers in front of your buyers who have already converted, who have already purchased something, so that their lifetime value as a customer increases. And then finally, advocate and promote, which are the final parts of the journey, where they become brand ambassadors and your customers begin to talk you up to their friends. They share testimonials. They say, this is a great farm, you should try it. Okay, those are the general steps in the process of warming someone up. And again, to get really a deep dive on this and understand how a customer thinks in each of these steps of the journey, I want you to watch that customer value journey video. I'll put the link down below. I think it's called what did I call it now? How to get more people to love your farm, I think is how I titled that video on YouTube. So the goal here, again, is that we want to be thinking of promotional strategies for each of the customers depending on where they are in the journey. So let me walk you through how this works, okay? What can you do with your promotional plan to get people to move to the next step? So if someone is already aware of your brand, they've seen something on Facebook, but they haven't yet given you their contact information, and I want them to move into that subscribe phase of the journey, what would I do? What are some promotional strategies that I can do to get them ready to start interacting with me? Because I want to get them on my email list, so that I can give them a weekly email and I can begin to warm them up and show them that I can add value to them, and eventually pitch them when they're warm and ready. Okay, so this is where I just start to brainstorm, and I get out my Post-it notes and I get out a pencil and I just focus on that one phase. So let's just say that I am looking at the subscribe section of the promotional calendar, all right? So I'm actually looking at the one that I filled out last week. I'm gonna give you the things that I plan to do. So this is now looking at subscribe, going across here, all right? And we're beginning January. What am I going to do in February? What am I going to do in March, right? And I just start to plot out ideas, and I write each idea down on one of these little guys, okay? So for example, subscribe. In January, I'm not actually doing a whole lot in January and February to try and get people onto my list. I wrote down cull the list. So this is where I actually have a strategy for getting people off my list who haven't been active, to make my list kind of a cleaner list. So I put that down on here. That's not really helping people subscribe, but it's just a reminder, hey, you got to keep your list clean so that it performs well for you. In March, I have down Instant Pot Challenge. So I'm going to do a challenge where I teach people how to use the Instant Pot on Facebook, and I'm going to try and get people to subscribe to the challenge. And once they give me their email address, then they'll be in my database, and I can begin to talk to them about other ways that they can purchase from my farm eventually, okay? So that's something that I've written. I wrote Instant Pot Challenge on one of these, and then I stuck this Post-it note just on my tabletop. I had a whole bunch of ideas that I was writing down. Here's another one, a list building blitz campaign. All right. So I do those twice a year. So I wrote list building blitz campaign on one of these guys, wrote it, stuck it on my tabletop, and said, I'm going to spend a whole week really trying to get people to join my CSA list through a lead magnet for my CSA. Then I have A to Z vegetable storage guide, which goes to a nurturing email sequence. So creating a lead magnet and really promoting that lead magnet on my social channels. That was another idea. A segmented email. So one time in May, I'm going to send an email out to everyone on my list who's not in my CSA and just ask them, hey, are you interested in learning about my CSA? If you are, click here. I only do that like twice a year, but I'm making sure that it's in here so that I have a way to get all these people who have been in my list to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm ready to hear about that now. All right. That was another suggestion that I wrote down. Lunchbox challenge is another challenge I plan to do that people will subscribe to join the Lunchbox challenge and they'll get on my list. A 20-day Facebook group pop-up group. So this will be a pop-up group, like a private group that I only have around for 20 days. And I'm going to use that pop-up group to collect leads for people who might be interested in CSA and really teach them all about how CSA works. It's going to be a small group of people, but that's kind of a strategy that I have for getting people to learn about CSA. And a crockpot challenge is another one that I thought of. Okay, so these were all ideas that I came up with for that category. Oh, there went my checklist. And then I just put them all on Post-it notes and I stuck them all on my tabletop. All right. So I do that for each of these different categories. Now I'm going to bend down and get my clipboard because that was awkward. Hold on. I'm back. All right, I'm going to walk you through just one more of these categories so that you can kind of get an example of what this looks like. All right. There's also the advocate stage. All right. This is for people who have reached that promotional level, the very top of the funnel. I'm sorry, the very bottom of the funnel, the people who love my brand. So what can I do to get those people to become even more promotional and talk up my farm? All right. So I just wrote out some ideas. I said, well, I could give referral cards and plop them into my Christmas cards. So that was one idea. Put that on a Post-it note. I could make farm foodie t-shirts and people would want to buy them and to self-identify with my brand and wear them around. Okay. So those would be people that were really into my brand who would want those. I could create a postcard that talks about the sampler, and I could pass that out to all my CSA members in the first month of our CSA when we're sold out to try and say, hey, tell your people, your friends, to try out the sampler for 4 weeks. You know people who would like our farm. So that was another idea to use my promoters. And then I thought of like having a testimonial video challenge where we do some sort of fun way of getting people to do a testimonial. And then I just wrote down testimonial videos in general, that I would go to some of my pickup sites and I would grab a customer and ask them to do a testimonial video with me, and I would just build up a catalog of testimonial videos that I can use throughout the year. Okay, those were my ideas that I came up with. All right, you do this for each of the different sections, like I said: aware, engage, subscribe, convert, excite, ascend, advocate. And this is where you spend the bulk of your time in this planning process. I spent a good hour and a half really thinking through ideas, just writing down an idea, sticking it on a Post-it note, and my tabletop here was covered with Post-it notes. So then it was time to actually look at it's like the second part of step 4 now. I have all these Post-it note ideas. I kind of know where some of them go, but I began to plot them out onto my calendar. So I'm like, well, where does it make sense to do a t-shirt for my promoters? Where would I want to sell that? Well, obviously, right before our season starts, I can begin to take pre-orders for that, okay? Where does it make sense to send out referral cards when I really need help kind of filling in those gaps? So I would kind of plot them out then on the various months. And then I would backtrack and think, okay, well, if that's when the postcard needs to go out, then I need to have it made the month before, right? So I'm taking notes and plotting this out on this calendar. Now, I'm also putting it on this guy. This is sort of like my this is like my roadmap that I can look at a glance and kind of see, well, what am I doing in each of the areas on any given month to make sure that it's balanced. So once I decided where I wanted to put these things in which month, I would kind of pencil them in the various places on the chart. Okay. So I have it in kind of two places. I have it on here, but I also have these Post-it notes that I've created. They start getting placed and moved onto the different months where they belong. And then I can kind of move them around. Okay. So I have sort of two different working documents that I can look at now and say, okay, what's coming in the months ahead? So that was sort of the process for sort of brainstorming it and getting it all out onto these Post-it notes, moving those Post-it notes onto this calendar itself, and then kind of writing them in on this grid so that I can see where are most of the boxes kind of filling in the various sections. All right. It's important that you are creating promotional materials for each section of the journey. If you're only focusing on, people who have already bought from you, then you're not going to have people filling in the pipeline when some of these people leave your business. So you do need to have strategies for lead generation, but obviously you need to have strategies to make sure that customers who are already your customers continue to buy more things from you. So really thinking through all the different levels of the customer journey and what can I do to move people to the next phase? What promotional marketing piece of asset can I create that's going to move people to the next phase? And when do I need to push the lever so that it fires throughout the season? All right. Okay, so that's like step 4. That's where you're going to spend the bulk of your time in this process. You're going to end up with this document that's got tons of Post-it notes all over it. See if I can show you mine. Is it in here? Yeah, okay, so this is what my document looks like. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got Post-it notes all over. This is September. You can see I have like a jillion, right? Kind of just reminding me of what was on here. And then step 5 is to evaluate and adjust, okay? So I'm looking at this big grid and I'm like, okay, realistically, Corinna, is there too much stuff going on here? Like, how busy is this? Do I have too many things? Is it unbalanced in one area of the funnel? Do I need to spend more energy and focus over down here at the bottom of the funnel than at the top? So I begin to just look at it and ask those questions. And that's when I make adjustments. And believe me, there were a lot of erase marks on this guy where I was like, no, I don't want to do that after all. That just doesn't really excite me, or I'm not sure that's going to have a big enough effect, so I'm just going to take it out. I only have so much time and energy, and I'm going to put it where I feel I'm going to have the biggest bang for my buck. So I also take a look at, is there white space in my calendar? Because we don't want to be selling all the time. I feel like that's a really, really key principle, that you want to have periods of rest where your customers don't hear the buy now button all the time, where you're just adding value to them, where you're just enjoying the relationship with them. So I do make sure that there are some months where there's not a lot going on, and that's okay. And those are typically obviously in the winter months when things are a little quiet around the farm. So I also would ask this question: where do you really need to spend the most energy? So as you're evaluating this grid, if you really need leads because you're starting out as a CSA or as a farm business, and you just really need leads, then that's where you need to concentrate and focus a lot of your promotional energies on, at the top of the funnel, in those strategies in the promotion grid. But otherwise, if you've already got a pretty established business, from experience, I would say that where you need to spend most of your time and energy is actually in the ascension phase and in the kind of promote phase. So this is because this is where you're going to make your most money. The reality is that your current customer is 10 times more likely to buy from you than a prospect would. So I learned that last year big time when we started letting our CSA customers buy things from the online store, and we would kind of bring those along to the pickup sites. We made so much more money. I just never really thought to ask my current customers to buy more. But the minute I started creating more products for them, sales went through the roof. So if you've already got a pretty good established customer base, I would say focus more of your attention and your promotional materials and energy on creating new products for people who are already your customers, and really building out that ascension phase of the customer value journey, coming up with different ways to get people to buy more things once they're already in your funnel. All right, so don't neglect your current customers. That's a really big mistake that I think a lot of us make. We focus a lot on how do I get more people into my funnel? How do I get more leads? When really we need to spend more time thinking about our current members. All right, finally, step 6. All right, the final step. I define my weekly routines and disciplines for the season. So what I just went through is kind of like the special one-time marketing promotional things that happen. So the list building blitz campaign, for instance, I do that 2 times a year for 5 or 6 days intense. But that's just like a special strategy that only happens and fires for a few days in the year. Or my launch, my early bird launch for my CSA members, put a lot of energy into that and I get really good rewards, but that's really only running for 14 days out of the year. But what are the disciplines that I do every day? What are those weekly things that I need to do every day to keep the marketing machine running in general in the heat of the season? And that's what I spend some time thinking about in step 6, because there are rituals that I go through to make sure that all these different pieces are firing. So the things that show up on this list for me, I was brainstorming, where I write a weekly email to different segments on my list. And I usually do that on, depending on who it is, it will be on a Tuesday or on a Saturday. All right. I do one piece of video content at least every week that I really try to be strategic about, and that happens on a very particular day. I do one Facebook post per day on my business page, and I do one Facebook post per day inside my private group for my CSA members only. I do one Instagram post or story per day, and I also have a weekly Facebook CSA unboxing video that we do. I don't actually do that, but I make sure that it gets done. That happens every week, once a week, very popular. And I write a newsletter for my CSA, and the article that's in the newsletter ends up becoming my blog post on my website. Okay, so those are the 6 things that have to happen every week. And I write those down, and then I plot them out onto a piece of paper. I don't get fancy, guys. I don't have this on a digital phone or anything. I just write it out. This is the one that I'm using for the winter, so it's not the same stuff. But I kind of keep track, these are the things that I have to work on every week. And I try to structure them and put them on certain days so that I can have blocks of time for my kids, right? Like in the summer especially, I want to do fun things with my 2 boys because they're off school. So I try to keep 2 days where the whole afternoon is open and we can do stuff. So if I have to work on the Facebook video, for instance, I'm going to do that in the morning on a certain day. Okay, so this is all kind of structured, and I stick this on my fridge, and that way I can take a look at it. I can take a look at it and remember when I wake up on Monday, oh, these are the things that I'm working on today. Okay, so I find that to be really, really helpful. A lot of people are like, you look like you have so much going on. How do you keep it all organized? This right here, my friend, is my secret strategy. Okay, that's my 6 steps, folks. I'm going to share a few final tips with you. If you try to sit down and plan out your promotional calendar, number 1, I would plan all 12 months, but really I only take the first 6 months seriously. So I'll reevaluate when I get to May, and I'll take a look at the final 6 months of the year, and I'll kind of tweak as I see fit. Really just focus on the first 6 months, but try to plan out roughly what you want to do for the year. Number 2, expect it to change. Every year, I look back at my grid and I'm like, oh, I didn't do 2 of those Post-it notes in that month. Well, oh well, Sometimes you get into the thick of things and you're in the middle of that month and you look at what you had planned and you're not feeling it. You're like, no, my audience is not going to respond to that. Or I just have no idea how I'm going to pull that off, and it just doesn't happen, and that's okay. So I go in with a plan, but the plan always changes, and there's always times when I'm like, what was I thinking? That's the worst idea ever. I'm not doing that. And it just comes off the calendar. All right. I would also say when you're planning to give it your best time. So don't do this at 9 p.m. at night when you're exhausted and you're getting ready for bed. This is something that you need to give your best time too. And I don't know what that is for you, but for me, it's usually between like 9:30 and noon is kind of when I have my really creative energy. And I would also say to keep it simple, don't feel like you have to put 8 million Post-it notes. Figure out where you really need to focus. Like I said, I would focus on the ascension phase, like trying to leverage the people who are already buying from you and figure out ways to increase that average order value and lifetime customer value first. And I would also, finally, my last tip is I would recommend doing this process if you can after you've evaluated your year. So I don't know if you do that, but my husband and I tend to do an end of year evaluation of our season. And we look at what went well, what didn't go so well, what were our really big sellers, what were the surprise products, what totally failed. Like last year, we tried to do a market gift card and we had like 2 people buy it. We pushed it so hard and like no one was interested. So I'm like, not gonna do that this year. So we're just gonna talk about the online store. I'm not gonna try and get people to pre-buy cards. So sometimes things fail, you talk about that and you learn from it and you move on. What did you have fun doing? Where was there energy in your brand? And what was draining you? Like, what are you looking at the opportunity cost and saying, you know what? I'm sitting at the farmer's market for like 6 hours and I came home with $400. Like, is that really worth it? Or can I spend that day creating a product that's going to sell better, you know, through my email list or whatever? Okay. And then what are your customers telling you? So this is also part of what we talk about in our evaluation at the end of the year too. Like, what did the surveys say? What were some of those vibes and themes that we kept hearing when we were talking to our members? And all of that kind of comes into this really good evaluation system. And this, when we do that first, then it really helps me know how to promote and create this plan better, because I've really thought through the victories, the wins, and the failures, and I know how to move forward. Well, there you have it. Those are the 6 steps that I use to building my promotional calendar. I don't expect you to necessarily follow it to the letter, but maybe you got one new idea out of this that was helpful to you, or maybe you just want to get your hands on that promotion grid and see if you can modify it for your farm. If you want to grab this, go to sharedlegacyfarms.com/promo plan. And I would love it if you would like this video or share it, or put something in the comments, a question that you have, or some kind of big aha takeaway that you got from this training. I would love that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and click the bell so you can get notified of future videos that are coming down the pike. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Learn more about what I do and how we're trying to help farmers get better at marketing at mydigitalfarmer.com. Hope you guys have a great day. See ya. Bye.